everyone to the Corporal Paul J. Sweeney Public Safety Building for the biannual Public Safety Awards for the Newcastle County Department of Public Safety, which will encompass Division of Police, Division of Communications, the Office of Emergency Management, and the Division of Emergency Medical Services. Would everyone please rise for the posting of the colors and the singing of our national anthem by Detective Joanne Smiley.
Detail, cut tank, detail, halt, face, raise hand, on.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light who was so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watch, the whistle gallantly streaming, and the rockets rattling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order, on.
Ready, post. Post. Ready, two.
Right, face, forward, arch, left, right, left, right, left, right.
You may be seated. I would now like to call Lieutenant Colonel Father David Murphy to the podium.
Let us pray. Loving God, you promise that when we gather, you are here in our midst. Help us to be aware of your presence in truth and charity. With your help, may we experience in our hearts an abundance of your grace, mercy, and peace. This we make our prayer. Amen.
Thank you, Father Murphy. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us here this morning to recognize the notable accomplishments of members of the Department of Public Safety as well as members of our communities. Your attendance and support is greatly appreciated by all the award recipients. I'd like to now take a moment to recognize some of the distinguished guests who are joining us in the audience this morning. The list is quite lengthy, so we ask that you hold your applause until the end. I'd like to welcome the County Executive of Newcastle County, the Honorable Thomas P. Gordon. Thank you, sir, for joining us. The Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. David Grimaldi, will be joining us in just a few minutes. He got hung up out in the lobby. The Director of Communications for Newcastle County, Mr. Antonio Prado, is here. District 2 Councilman Robert Weiner is represented by his aide, Louis Hinkle. District 8 Councilman John Cartier is represented by his aide, Scott Collins. District 11 Councilman David Tackett is with us this morning. District 12 Councilman William Bill Bell is represented by his aide this morning, Karen Barlow. Several of the Newcastle County row officers are here with us this morning. Newcastle County Sheriff Trinidad Navarro is here. Recorder of Deeds, Mr. Michael Kazakowski, is here. Newcastle County Chief Deputy Sheriff Stuart Snyder is with us. The Register of Wills, Cyril Poppity, is with us. Matt Marshall, the Deputy Newcastle County Director for Representative Senator Tom Carter's office, is here. Of course, the Emergency Communications Chief, Jeffrey Miller, is here. The Emergency Medical Services Chief, Chief Larry Tam, is here. The Chief of our Office of Emergency Management, Mr. Dave Carpenter, is with us. Senior Lieutenant Brahms is here representing the Newcastle City Police Department. The Delaware Capitol Police is represented by Lieutenant Hirschfeld this morning. Chief Hassel of the Claymont Fire Company is joining us. And Captain Tom Logan of the Delaware State Police is here. Thank you all for joining us, and I apologize ahead of time if I missed anybody in attendance. But thank you all for coming. As I said earlier, this morning, this award ceremony will encompass all of the second half of 2014, where notable accomplishments were made by members of the public safety community, and as well as members of our community and citizens. We'll also include in this several awards that have actually occurred in the first quarter of 2015, where citizens will be recognized. I would now like to call the Director of Public Safety, Mr. Joseph Bryan Jr., to the podium for some brief remarks. Director.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank all in attendance for the second half of the 2014 Department of Public Safety Award ceremony. This is my fourth ceremony since returning to Newcastle County, and each one of them, since I've been back, we've had well over 100 members receiving awards at each one of these ceremonies. And today is no different. We have at least 104 members of the Department of Public Safety being recognized for their accomplishments. For the first half of 2014, which occurred back in September, we had about 101 members who received awards. I found that to be interesting in that when you compare the last two ceremonies and you look at the names on the list, very few are repeated. To me, that says a lot about the level of commitment and dedication to service provided by the men and women of the Newcastle County Department of Public Safety. I must acknowledge the supervisors and those who prepared and submitted documentation on these events. I think it's important to recognize our police officers during these challenging times, especially when you see our officers in the spotlight for negative reasons. It's equally important to recognize our paramedics who respond day in and day out to the sick, the injured, and sometimes death. And we dare not forget the members of our 911 center, the lifeline on the other end of that radio, who keep all of our first responders safe. To our citizens of Newcastle County being recognized today for providing assistance to others, I say thank you. And I will close by saying the effort by all receiving awards today is truly commendable. I thank you, and I applaud you for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'd now like to call the County Executive of Newcastle County, Honorable Thomas T. Boone, to the podium. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, all. Welcome to Newcastle County Department of Public Safety Award Ceremony. You know, I have to start again by saying what a great management team I think we have out here under the direction of Director Joe Bryant, with Colonel Elmer Setting, Chief Larry Tan, Chief Jeffrey Miller. I'd also like to congratulate all of the recipients today from the police, emergency medical service, communications, as well as emergency management for the awards that will be received today. And again, out of all the 500 or so employees, many have done great jobs and won't be recognized here today. But this is an indication of what a wonderful job they're doing. And without further ado, let's go on.
Thank you, Mr. Executive. I'd now like to call the Chief of the Newcastle County Police, Colonel Elmer M. Setting, to the podium for some remarks.
Actually, I've been a little bit under the weather, and I've seen so many friends and supporters over the last 2 days with the opening of the Fusion Center. A vision of our county executive, when no one was thinking about a Fusion Center, is that room was going south, and that's putting it mildly. He had a vision of putting this Fusion Center together, and then our director, Joe Bryant, a former major in the county police, actually brought the thing to fruition, and we named it after Councilman Bell. Such a proud day. I wanted to say hello and shake so many hands. I'm just not, I'm getting over this, but I wasn't in a position to do that yesterday, and I'm not really in a position to do it today. So I just want to say to everyone, even though I didn't personally agree to do, welcome, and thank you for being here. And I'm not going to give anyone whatever the heck this is that my grandkids gave me. So when the officers come up today, you will be saluted, but I will not be shaking hands. Don't take it personally, and it's just that I don't want to see half my workforce out sick. As we are going to recognize so many different people from all the divisions, it is remarkable to me, as the director pointed out, these awards, they come with parameters. They come with specific things that you must accomplish or do to be recognized. So at one point, as officer after officer, 911 operator after 911 operator, and medic after medic come up here, you start to think, well, they're giving out these awards like candy. There goes our tax money. These are exemplary people, and they are doing an exemplary job. And the pride that I feel is broadly incommunicable. I will recognize my senior command staff because all too often they're overlooked. They don't get to win awards anymore, but they are some of the most dedicated and selfless people you'll meet. They are in here every day. First thing, they're the last to leave, and they help me run this agency so well. Major Matthew Jameson, Major Vaughn Bond, Captain Robert McLugas, Captain Patrick Proud, Captain Wendy Feeser, Captain Laura O'Sullivan, Captain Clayton Watson. Thank you for all you do. Again, Captain Doug Merle, he's not sitting there, but I'm recognizing him because he actually is our professional development unit commander who puts on these events. And thank you to PDU for all that they do. We're going to recognize PDU today. When you go through a police department with 380 people that suffers from an attrition rate from the academies in the late 80s and early 90s, when Tom Gordon was the chief, they were doing back-to-back academies. And I know how hard that is because I was in PDU at the time. And it's very difficult. And we will be recognizing them today, as since I've been in as chief, we've done 4 academies. So congratulations on their efforts. To all the law enforcement, no matter what branch, no matter if you've served prior or you're serving now, thank you for being here. We are in a very tough time in policing. But when you are part of an agency that is doing so well, even in the turbulent waters, there are lights of leadership that you can see. I have 2. I have Director Joe Bryant, and I'll point out again, a former major of this department and a chief of police of the Delaware River and Bay. And I know I said it earlier, but it bears repeating. Tom Gordon, our colonel, when I came on in 1989, has been a leader when times have been tough and people are shutting off funding to police departments. He has kept it running strong and smooth, and I'm grateful for that, sir. With that being said, I'm going to step to the center. I'm going to ask Joe Bryant and the county executive to join me as we would like to recognize the men and women for the second half of 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. For those of you being recognized and receiving an award, when your name is called, please come to the front and stand next to the Colonel. I'd first like to call a young man, Cyrus Trent, and he'd like to come up with his father, I believe, and also Councilman Tackett. Thank you very much, sir. During the early morning hours of February 28th of this year in the area of the 200 block of Bluefield Road in Newark, 7-year-old Cyrus Trent looked out his window and observed a strange subject acting suspiciously. We often say, if you see something, say something. That's exactly what Cyrus did. He observed the subject walking up and down the neighbor's driveway wearing something covering his head and face. Even though only 7 years old, Cyrus knew this was odd and immediately told his parents. Cyrus's father took up the case and looked out the window and observed the subject walking through the neighbor's driveway and attempted to follow him in his vehicle, but lost sight when the subject began to run down the street. Cyrus's mother, who's also with us today, called the police to report the incident. Patrol officers responded to the neighborhood and located the subject a few streets away, and upon further investigation discovered the subject was a wanted fugitive. After taking the subject into custody, further investigation revealed the subject actually was in possession of a number of stolen items. These items included electronics and several credit cards. After additional investigation, these items were linked to several thefts from the area and actually returned to the victims of these thefts. Because of Cyrus's keen observations, quick thinking, and reporting the suspicious subject to his parents, seeing something and saying something, a wanted fugitive was apprehended, stolen property was returned to innocent victims, and countless additional crimes were prevented. The Division of Public Safety thanks Cyrus for being a model young citizen, preventing these crimes and making this apprehension possible. For these reasons, and to show our sincere thanks, Cyrus Trent is being given a proclamation by Councilman Tackett honoring his actions, and is also being awarded a certificate of appreciation and a Chief of Police Challenge Award. Thank you, Cyrus. Angelise Marrero and Kristen Duvall. You can come up. During the month of July and August 2014, the 26-year-old disabled victim was assaulted and bullied by several teenage perpetrators in the Newark area. While the attacks themselves were enough to disturb anyone, the attackers went one step further and memorialized the events by taking cell phone videos of the assaults. The visually disturbing videos not only showed the victim being savagely attacked, but also showed additional teenagers merely standing by inciting the attacks, videotaping the assaults, and choosing to do nothing rather than aiding the victim. To add an additional level of torture to the victim, the videos were then posted to social media outlets, including Instagram and YouTube. Student Angelise Marrero observed the shocking videos and decided to do the morally correct thing. She took action to help the victim. Armed with only her smartphone, Angelise used the social network site #TheBullyProject and reposted the videos to bring awareness to the incident. Thanks in part to Angelise's efforts, the bullying videos went viral, generating a strong public interest and outrage. The incident made local and national news, and there have been over 4,000 posts to the social media outlets where the videos were posted. This brought an unbelievable level of awareness to the local and national bullying epidemic. Immediately after Angelise posted the videos to bring awareness to the incident, the Newcastle County Police launched an intensive investigation to bring the perpetrators of these heinous crimes to justice. While the investigation was fully underway, the Newcastle County Police was then contacted by student Kristen Duvall, who reported seeing the videos and recognizing the severity of the situation. Kristen was deeply disturbed knowing the targeted victim was an at-risk individual with a disability, and he was being bullied. Although fearful of retaliation, Kristen had the courage to contact the police and provide the names of the suspects in the video who she recognized to be students at a local high school. Kristen's actions propelled the police investigation and made it possible to resolve the case. Because of their admirable actions of getting involved, taking a stand, and believing that no one deserves to be bullied, students Angelise Marrero and Kristen Duvall made a difference. They improved the quality of life for that victim. And they also improved the quality of life for the community by ensuring that these suspects who assaulted this victim were held accountable for their actions. For this reason, Angelise and Kristen are awarded certificates of appreciation and a Chief of Police Challenge Coin. John Strohbot. During the evening of March 27, 2015, Newcastle County Police Patrol units were in the area of Falk and Grub Roads in Wilmington conducting an investigation. The investigation drew one of the officers away from his patrol vehicle and upon his return noticed the vehicle was severely damaged. John Strohbot, the local resident, approached one of the officers and advised he witnessed what had happened. He stated there were 3 occupants that parked the vehicle near the patrol cruiser and obviously began to execute a plan to damage the car. Mr. Strohbot described the incident in detail as he watched the subject walk down Grub Road as to check to see if he was being watched. Then he walked back and began jumping on the patrol vehicle's hood, causing damage. The suspect then merely got back into the car he arrived in as if nothing happened and fled the area. Mr. Strohbot did the correct thing and informed the police of everything he saw and actually was able to provide a plate number and a great description of the suspects to the officers. With Mr. Strohbot's information, an investigation was launched and the division was able to identify all 3 of the subjects involved and arrest them on charges of criminal mischief and conspiracy for damaging the taxpayers' property. Due to John's quick reactions, keen observation, and communication to police, this apprehension was possible. For this reason, John Strohbot is awarded a certificate of appreciation and a Chief of Police Challenge Coin. Thank you. I'd now like to ask the Mounted Patrol Unit to come forward. Senior Sergeant Mary Devine, Master Corporal Jose Baerga, Master Corporal William Brown, Officer First Class Gregory Bruno, Officer First Class Eric Selhorst, and Officer First Class Morris Schultz. Between September 25th and September 29th of 2014, Newcastle County hosted the 2014 North American Police Equestrian Conference, also known as NAPEC, at the Carousel Park and Equestrian Center. NAPEC is a prominent mounted police equestrian competition held annually at notable locations throughout North America. During this competition, rider and horse compete in categories demonstrating horse riding equitation capabilities, obstacle course maneuvering, officer uniform appearance, as well as horse and tack mount appearance. The 2014 NAPEC event in Newcastle County hosted 85 mounted police riders and their horses representing 22 police agencies from 11 different states and Canada. In order to hold this event, the Mounted Patrol was tasked with ensuring that all arrangements and improvements to the equestrian center that were needed for this event were completed. Each officer in front of you was assigned an area of responsibility to ensure that the competition demonstrated the division's belief in excellence in policing. The list of tasks these officers encountered was quite daunting, to say the least. A few of them were making equipment purchases, fundraising, coordinating grounds improvements, building obstacle courses, hiring judges, ordering and setting up temporary horse stalls, and organizing an award ceremony and banquet for over 250 people. The Mounted Patrol Unit worked tirelessly without regard to the clock or personal comfort in order to execute all of these tasks successfully. The result of the Mounted Patrol Unit's work was a huge success. The event yielded 8,500 spectators with an overwhelming positive response from both the competition attendees and the general public, commenting that the New Castle County event was quote unquote by far the best ever. The New Castle County Police Department is a class act, and the New Castle County Police Department Mounted Patrol has set the bar high. The Mounted Patrol Unit's teamwork and professionalism were evident in all of their efforts to achieve a successful NAPAC conference, and for this they are awarded the Director of Public Safety Award. I asked Officer First Class Eric Selhorst to remain at the podium with me. If you could please go back over to the chief, that would be great. Don't mean to play musical award chairs with him, but in the interest of time. During 2014, Officer First Class Eric Selhorst helped organize the department's hosting of the NAPAC event that we just mentioned at Carousel Park. This was an extremely large endeavor. From the preliminary planning stages of this event, Officer Selhorst selflessly dedicated himself to ensuring the event was a huge success. Officer Selhorst recognized the prestige associated with hosting this event and ensured the citizens of New Castle County and the Division of Police would be proud of the competition. Officer Selhorst worked to partner with businesses and organizations that could bring assets and resources to the event to help ensure its success. Because of his efforts, strong public and private partnerships were formed, helping make an outstanding event for the competitors and the public. While the final preparations for the NAPAC event were in the works and Officer Selhorst was extremely busy, the division experienced a tragedy when a retired officer was seriously injured. Realizing that there would be substantial medical bills associated with the retired officer's recovery, the division was committed to helping in any way possible. Officer Selhorst, although already extremely busy, stepped to the front and championed this cause because the division was committed to it. The injury of one of our own retired officers pulled at the heartstrings of our community, but Officer Selhorst committed himself to helping the officer and their family through a very difficult time. A fundraising event was proposed and planned by the FOP with the full support of the entire public safety family. Officer Selhorst distinguished himself by quickly bringing together many public and private sector partners that helped make the event a success. The proceeds donated to this family were very substantial. For all of his actions, Officer First Class Eric Selhorst was awarded the Chief's Citation. Officer John Rose, Officer Joseph Mahaly, and Officer Daniel Bucci. If you could please come. On September 27, 2014, while conducting proactive patrols in the Narrows Road and Marlboro Drive area of Newark, Officer John Rose, Officer Joseph Mahaly, and Officer Daniel Bucci heard a single gunshot. A subsequent search of the area by these officers yielded a witness and a description of a possible suspect seen running from the area. Officer Rose, Mahaly, and Bucci further conducted foot patrols in the area in an attempt to locate the described subject. In the area of the Brookside Little League field, they located a juvenile fitting the general description of the fleeing suspect and attempted to stop him. However, he fled, ignoring their commands. But the officers were persistent, and they were able to stop and detain the juvenile. And upon further investigation, they discovered him to be in possession of a Smith & Wesson .40 caliber handgun that was fully loaded, and he also had additional ammunition with him. The handgun was also then later found to be stolen. Through the officers' thorough investigation and actions, resulted in the recovery of a stolen firearm from a reckless juvenile, reducing the possibility for further reckless and dangerous behavior by that juvenile. For that action, in making the community safer, Officers John Rose, Joseph Mahali, and Daniel Bucci are awarded certificates of appreciation. Officer First Class Donald Fisher. Officer First Class Donald Fisher assisted Officer First Class Andrea Mancuso on a suspicious vehicle stop on December 9th, 2014 in the area of Vanlin Court in the community of Willow Run. During the vehicle stop, Officer Fisher keenly observed the operator of the vehicle making quick movements towards the center console of the vehicle and immediately took steps to order the operator out. Upon further investigation, by Officer Fisher, the operator was found to be in possession of a .25 caliber handgun, which was fully loaded with 1 round in the chamber. Officer Fisher also detected a strong odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle, and this led to a search of the vehicle where 1 gram of marijuana was found, 0.105 grams of heroin, and 0.47 grams of crack cocaine were found. Due to Officer Fisher's investigative acuteness and his immediate recognition of the operator's suspicious behavior, Officer Fisher was able to ensure the safety of his fellow officer and the public as well. Officer Fisher's outstanding police work resulted in the collection of an illegal firearm, illegal narcotics, and the arrest of a dangerous individual. For his actions in making the community safer, Officer First Class Donald Fisher is awarded a Commendation of Merit. So, Officer First Class Donald Fisher is with us again at the front of the room. During the month of July of 2014, Officer Fisher was contacted by a confidential source that that provided information and identified a suspect that was possibly selling large amounts of heroin in the Hunters Crossing apartments in Newark. Upon further investigation by Officer Fisher, it was determined that the suspect was also a wanted fugitive. Officer Fisher began an investigation which ultimately led him to a hotel within the city limits of Newark. Upon locating and attempting to stop the suspect in the hotel parking lot, the suspect fled on foot across Main Street, however was subsequently apprehended. A subsequent search warrant of the suspect's hotel room yielded 6.54 grams of heroin, which equaled 436 individual baggies. The suspect later admitted to selling the heroin for profit and hiding out at the hotel due to his fugitive status. Due to Officer Fisher's investigative skills, he effectively took a dangerous criminal off of our streets. For his actions in making the community safer, Officer First Class Donald Fisher is awarded a Commendation of Merit. Next, I'd like to call the members of the Professional Development Unit up front. Senior Sergeant Gerald Tatum, Sergeant Gregory Meyer, Master Corporal Cheryl Andrews, Master Corporal Kevin Warner, Corporal James Allison, Officer First Class Kevon Cumberbatch, Officer First Class Annette Irons, Officer First Class Mark Censerato, Officer First Class Tyler Shears, Officer First Class Brett Weil, Secretary Jan Miller, background investigator Andrew Ryan, background investigator David Stewart, background investigator Kathleen Brightigan, background investigator James Fitzgerald, background investigator Glenn Davis, and former background investigator John Lodge. He actually cannot be here due to an illness in the family. With the start of the 39th Police Recruit Class in October of 2013, the Division of Police was at full authorized strength. However, with the number of eligible officers to retire, vacancies were expected, and that was anticipated to impact the level of police services being provided to the citizens. With Director Bryan's commitment to Colonel Setting to remain fully staffed and to provide excellent police services to the citizens of the county, the Professional Development Unit began another intense recruiting and hiring process immediately after the start of the 39th Police Academy. The Professional Development Unit was charged with developing innovative ways to recruit the most qualified applicants and manage the intense hiring process. The Professional Development Unit utilized 3 temporarily assigned recruiters working with the division's 1 full-time recruiter to bolster the overall number of applicants. The recruiting efforts of the unit were impressive, with the division attending over 150 recruiting events in the spring and fall, which more than quadrupled the recruiting efforts of the previous year. Several of the recruiting efforts were never done before. For example, the Professional Development Unit took an early morning trip to New York City and appeared on the Good Morning America show to expand our recruiting efforts to a national level. The intense recruiting effort paid dividends, with the police department receiving over 1,600 applications, which again was a near 2-fold increase from the previous year. Not only are the numbers themselves impressive, the Professional Development Unit upheld the mission of attracting applicants that reflect our community's demographics. Over 51% of the applications received were from protected class applicants. Out of the 1,629 applications, only 74 applicants continued all the way through to the background investigation stage of the hiring process. This was after conducting written and physical tests of each applicant and conducting 336 oral board interviews. Out of the over 1,600 applications, the New Castle County Division of Police hired 31 of the most well-qualified applicants who began the Police Academy, the Fighting 40th, on September 8, 2014. In addition to conducting this intense hiring process, the unit also continued with all of its other numerous responsibilities, including 3 promotional ceremonies, 2 award ceremonies very similar to this, the Police Memorial Service, the 39th Recruit Class graduation, and coordination of 38 annual in-service training days and the attendance of more than 178 supplemental training events. For the Professional Development Unit's dedication and outstanding contribution to the agency over the course of 2014, the Professional Development Unit personnel are awarded the Director of Public Safety. Officer Matthew Donovan and Officer Timothy Collins. On October 15, 2014, during a proactive patrol assignment, Officer Matthew Donovan and Officer Timothy Collins conducted a motor vehicle stop on a vehicle that did not use its turn signal. After learning that one of the occupants provided a false name, Officers Donovan and Collins detained the suspects for further questioning. During the course of the investigation, it was discovered one of the suspects was a fugitive from justice and also in possession of illegal drugs. The other occupant was found to be in possession of illegal drugs as well. And at the conclusion of the investigation, Officer Donovan and Officer Collins were able to seize 1,119 bags of heroin, 71 grams of powder cocaine, 51 grams of crack cocaine, and 38 various prescription pills. As a result of Officer Donovan's and Officer Collins' thorough investigation and tenacity to fully investigate a simple traffic violation, a large amount of dangerous drugs were taken off of the streets. For their efforts, Officer Matthew Donovan and Officer Timothy Collins are awarded a Commendation of Merit. Officer Joshua Smith. During the months of October and November 2014, the Newcastle County Police Department received numerous calls for thefts in one community. Officer Joshua Smith responded to one of these theft complaints and dedicated himself to solving the issue that was plaguing the neighborhood. Officer Smith painstakingly processed the victim's property and was able to collect latent fingerprints, which in turn led to developing a suspect. Officer Smith continued investigating the case, and with the potential suspect identified, he was able to link that suspect to multiple additional thefts from the area. He interviewed this suspect and obtained a confession and was able to make an arrest. Numerous theft investigations and complaints were cleared due to Officer Smith's diligent evidence collection and investigative efforts. For his efforts, Officer Joshua Smith is awarded a Commendation of Merit. Officer First Class William Husson. On September 12, 2014, Officer First Class Husson was called to investigate a hit-and-run motor vehicle accident that killed a bicyclist. Officer Husson worked tirelessly, spending countless hours examining the scene, collecting evidence, and identifying the hit-and-run driver. He then worked diligently to build a case, a prosecutable case nonetheless, against this driver to bring closure to the victim's family. Officer Husson's detailed interviews, evidence processing, and scene reconstruction ultimately led to the operator being indicted for manslaughter and leaving the scene of a fatal collision. While this case exemplified Officer Husson's work ethic and investigative abilities, he did not rest and pressed on serving the citizens of the county. Just a few months after completing the previously mentioned investigation, he conducted a motor vehicle stop in a TAPS patrol area and located a handgun in the vehicle that was seized, with the operator being charged with carrying a concealed deadly weapon. A few days after that motor vehicle stop, Officer Husson continued his productivity and stopped the vehicle for being suspicious in another TAPS area. A search of that vehicle led to the seizure of 1.5 pounds of marijuana. Officer Husson continues to be productive and show an ongoing trend of outstanding police work. For his investigative and proactive actions, Officer First Class Husson will be awarded a Commendation of Merit. Officer First Class Ronald Phillips. On March 28, 2014, while investigating a burglary, Officer First Class Phillips extensively processed the scene, resulting in the recovery of several latent quality fingerprints from the point of entry window. At that time, no matches were discovered to the recovered prints. However, later in the year, the suspect was arrested on a separate unrelated case and was fingerprinted. A cold case print hit was received for the original burglary, at which time Officer Phillips resumed the investigation. Based on this information, he was able to arrest the suspect and obtain a confession to the burglary and other thefts in the area. This case showed Officer Phillips' thorough crime scene processing and diligent follow-up to solve the case, although it was already several months old. For his thorough investigative actions, Officer Phillips is awarded a certificate of appreciation. Officer First Class Richard Shugart. On July 3rd, 2014, Officer First Class Shugart conducted a traffic stop, at which time one of the occupants of the vehicle exited and fled on foot. Officer Shugart immediately pursued the suspect while maintaining radio contact with our communications division. He was advising the assisting units of his location and direction of travel. While in the active foot pursuit, he observed the suspect actively pulling at his waistband several times. Officer Shugart recognized that the suspect may in fact be armed and took the necessary steps of notifying assisting officers to use caution to ensure their safety. As Officer Shugart continued the lengthy foot pursuit, the suspect, who was in fact armed, discarded a handgun. Assisting officers were aware of the suspect's direction of travel and the description because of Officer Shugart's communication. They were able to locate that suspect and apprehend him. Officers then recovered the discarded weapon, which was found to be fully loaded. The suspect and the other occupants of the vehicle were arrested for their crimes and eventually provided information on an active homicide investigation to the Criminal Investigations Unit. Officer Shugart was relentless in his pursuit, stayed calm, and kept the safety of assisting officers in the front of his mind. His proactive policing combined with good officer safety removed the handgun from the street. For his relentless pursuit of an armed suspect, Officer Shugart is awarded a Commendation of Merit. Master Corporal Christopher Sarnecki. On August 22nd, 2014, Master Corporal Sarnecki was assisting patrol officers that were chasing a suspect on foot that was armed with a handgun. Corporal Sarnecki made a canine announcement and deployed his canine partner Cooper, and upon the suspect seeing that Cooper was closing in on him, the suspect decided wisely to surrender. Canine Cooper was placed in a down position and obeyed his commands within close proximity of the dangerous suspect. He remained there until the suspect was in custody. During the search of the suspect, a handgun was recovered. Corporal Sarnecki's quick actions and thinking to utilize Canine Cooper and his continued training of Canine Cooper helped apprehend the suspect who was armed. For his efforts, Master Corporal Sarnecki will be awarded a certificate of appreciation. Officer First Class Jennifer Eshman. On June 30th, 2014, Officer First Class Eshman began investigating a series of indecent exposure incidents. The Division of Police had received several calls reporting a male subject exposing himself to juveniles in a particular area on different occasions. Officer Eshman conducted a thorough investigation and by using sound investigative methodology identified a viable suspect. Officer Eshman took it upon herself to search the registered sex offender list and develop this suspect that lived in the immediate area. After completing a photo array and presenting it to one of the juvenile victims, she positively identified the suspect. Officer Eshman was able to arrest the suspect, who was in fact the initial registered sex offender she suspected. Officer Eshman did not stop her investigation at that point. After the arrest, she worked to ensure there were no additional victims and actually found the suspect had juvenile relatives living with him at his residence at the time. It was learned from those young relatives that the suspect had sexually abused them as well. Officer Eshman's thorough investigation not only put an end to the indecent exposure incidents, but also led to the intervention on behalf of additional previously unknown juvenile victims. For her investigative actions, Officer First Class Jennifer Eshman was awarded a Commendation of Merit. next award we present this morning is somewhat unique. I would now like to ask the Commandant of the Delaware Military Academy, Mr. Anthony Puella, to join Colonel Setting, the County Executive Board, and Director Bryan at the front of the room. Commandant Puella is a lifelong Delawarean who has demonstrated a conviction to serving our country and communities. Commandant Puella is a graduate of Thomas McCain High School and a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. After serving our country in the Marine Corps, Mr. Puella recognized our society's need for capable educators and leaders. With this as his driving force, Mr. Puella attained his Bachelor's of Science degree in Behavioral Science and his Master's of Science degree in School Leadership from Wilmington University. After completing his education, Mr. Puella continued serving our community and began his career in education at George B. Kirk Middle School as a safety liaison officer. His work there led to the school being named as a top safe school in 1999. In 2003, Mr. Puella left the Kirk Middle School for the newly founded Delaware Military Academy as their athletic director and dean of cadets. After establishing a full complement of successful athletic programs and instituting a safe environment that was conducive to learning, Mr. Puella was promoted in 2011 to Commandant of the Delaware Military Academy, the position he currently holds. As the Commandant of the Delaware Military Academy, Mr. Puella has chosen to build bridges between the school and the community. The cadets at the Delaware Military Academy are second to none. They each understand the values of service, commitment, and honor. Through his leadership, the Delaware Military Academy and Commandant Puella have become true friends to the Newcastle County Police. Commandant Puella is always willing to help the Division of Police in any way possible. Commandant Puella has been the keynote speaker for the division at our most recent Academy graduation class, where he addressed the graduating Academy class with a truly inspirational vision that undoubtedly motivated the recruits to serve our community in a very professional manner. In addition to being the keynote speaker, Commandant Puella also facilitated the Delaware Military Academy Choir singing the national anthem at our graduation ceremony. The Delaware Military Academy Choir is directed by Mrs. Jennifer Kelman. Jennifer, could you join the Commandant? The DMA Choir's rendition of the national anthem was excellent and truly set the tone for a first-class graduation ceremony. As a token of our appreciation, the Division of Police would like to present Commandant Puella with a certificate of appreciation that achieves challenge point to recognize his service and friendship to our communities as well as the division. The division will also present Ms. Kelman with a certificate of appreciation recognizing her choir's efforts. Thank you both for all that you have done for the Newcastle County Police. The final awards we present this morning are the Kiwanis Club Awards. I would now like to ask President Barczewski and their past president, Mr. Olmstead, to join us at the front of the room. Every year, the Wilmington Kiwanis Club acknowledges a Newcastle County police officer for commendable and outstanding service for each quarter of the year, and they also recognize an officer on an annual basis. The recipient of the Kiwanis Award for the third quarter of 2014 for the incident you just heard about a few moments ago in the apprehension of an armed suspect will be presented to Officer First Class Richard Shugart. Officer Shugart actually just got off of Midnight's about a half hour ago. I should have told you he was getting 2 awards. I apologize for that, but I will deliver that award to him. The recipient of the Kiwanis Award for the fourth quarter of 2014 for an outstanding drug investigation and also keeping officer safety at the forefront of his mind, as you heard in 2 earlier described incidents, will be presented to Officer Donald Fisher. I could take those Awards. And thank you very much. I apologize for that, but thank you. We thank the Kiwanis Club for everything they do. Okay? Now, I know the next person is here, I promise. Yep. The recipient of the annual Kiwanis Award for 2014 is Detective Michelle Burris. Senior Sergeant Alan Herring will accept Detective Burris's award on her behalf because of the capacity she's currently working in. Detective Burris is being recognized as the annual award recipient for an investigation she spearheaded into a complex drug distribution network that was operating in one of our local apartment complexes. This investigation resulted in the seizure of 2 vehicles, the arrest of 4 defendants, $24,446 of United States currency, and the largest seizure to date for the Newcastle County Police Department of 13,558 bags of heroin totaling over 200 grams. To say the least, Detective Burris made a dent in the heroin supply that is plaguing our communities. For her efforts in spearheading this investigation, she is awarded the annual Kiwanis Club Award. Again, we would like to thank President Barczewski and past President Olmsted and the entire Wilmington Kiwanis Club for all you do with our agency. And thank you very much for taking the time to recognize these officers. That concludes the presentation of awards for the Division of Police. Thank you, Colonel Setting. If you could please take your seat. I would now like to introduce the Chief of Communications, or ask the Chief of Communications, Mr. Jeffrey Miller, to join the County Executive and Director at the front of the room, and ask Training Coordinator Yvette Price to come to the podium to announce the awards for the Division of Communications.
I'd like to call Eli Stewart and Mara Carter to the podium. These are the recipients of our Critical Incident Award, and it's part 1 and part 2 to the actual incident. And we'll start with Eli Stewart. He received a call from a female who initially appeared to be calling a friend. After a few moments, he realized that the female was in need of police assistance and was unable to answer his questions. He assured the female that he understood she was in distress and began asking her questions, replying yes or no answers. In an attempt to gather information, he was able to obtain the caller's location using the GPS coordinates and was able to confirm the caller's phone number. PSO Stewart kept the female on the phone and reassured her that the police were responding. And while transferring the call into Recon, which is the police side of the 911 center, she hung up. He remained on the phone, relaying information to the dispatcher. And the incident was later determined to be kidnapping, where the victim was forced to contact a family member in reference to collect monies that were owed to the suspect. And Mara Clark, dispatcher, the police side, was the one who received the call from Eli, and where he updated her with the information and told communicator Clark to call the female back. She was unable to get any direct answers, and everything was a yes or no response. She confirmed the address, determined suspects were not allowing her to leave the residence. And she was able to ascertain how many suspects were involved, how many were armed with weapons, and where they were in the residence. Prior to the arrival of the police, she could hear the victim being assaulted. This information was provided to the responding units, which ultimately led to the victim's release and the rest of suspects involved. And for both of their attention to detail, they are both awarded the critical incident award. Christopher J. Williams. Joseph Pugh. Joseph is being awarded the Critical Incident Team Award. On September the 7th, 2014, Joe was a dispatcher and trainee on the main dispatch channel with our telecommunicator Iannucci assisting him. Officer Nepris was dispatched to a suspicious vehicle in the development of Amberfield. After Officer Nepris arrived on scene, she requested backup and sounded out of breath. Less than a minute or so later, Officer Nepris was inquiring for those units to step it up. For the public, that means let's be fine. When the public transmitted, when she transmitted the third time, it was quite apparent that she was physically involved in some type of altercation. Telecommunicator McHugh picked right up on that. He called at 10:40. Officers were dispatched and responded within minutes. He remained calm during the call and the chaotic situation, which awards Joe McHugh the Critical Incident Team Award for his efforts assisting Officer Nepris. We have Alfred Russell and Michael Williams. This award is for the Critical Incident Unit Award for the unit citation. On Sunday, September 21st at 16:21 hours, the 911 center became inundated with numerous calls reference to an overturned bus. Due to the location of the incident, a large majority of the callers gave general locations, which resulted in the staff's combined efforts to pinpoint the correct location. Police, fire, and EMS were dispatched, not knowing what they would find. Upon arrival, the scene was assessed and mass casualty incident protocol was utilized. Our agency has never experienced an incident of this magnitude, but as a team, we all pulled together and assisted each other and made sure the needs of the responders were met. So they are two of many on the shift who were working last night, so they're not here to receive the gift of their award. Thank you. Mike, just stay up here. These two guys are one of many on the team, the C Squad, that is awarded for the Critical Incident Team Award. And on September the 12th, the 911 center received a call from a passerby that a man had cut his arm with a chainsaw. The victim was in the upper part of a tree, then fell approximately 10 feet, became trapped within the branches of the tree, 20 feet above the ground. Hello, communicator Mike Williams stayed on the phone, took the passerby obtaining information from responding units, relaying information to the squad. Along with the local fire department, the Delaware State Police helicopter, the Tasco County high-angle rescue team arrived to the scene and rescued the victim from the tree. The patient was then transported to the hospital. Through the efforts of the responding rescue teams, a positive outcome was the end result. Fire Board D Squad is nominated and received the Critical Incident Team Award. you. This is another critical incident team award. Looks like it's, 2 squads that were involved, C and maybe D. On December the 12th, fire board received a call from a reporting barn fire on Gun Club Road in Hocassin. Several animals were trapped inside. Fire board received additional calls reporting that an apartment building was on fire approximately 2 minutes later. During both incidents, fire board handled 29 additional fire calls and EMS incidents requiring dispatch, along with handling 11 different dispatches for cover-ups. The Claymont Fire also had a Mayday, which created the need for a third alarm response. These incidents immediately put a strain on the fire board, on the on-call person who was contacted and a page was sent out for anybody that was available to come in and assist the shift. If not for the fire person dropping what they were doing and responding to staff the fire board, quality of service could have been compromised. So their efforts truly exemplify teamwork and dedication, and for this, they have deserved the Critical Incident Team Award. Stay here. No, you gotta stay up one more.
Official proceeding.
The shift also was involved in an incident on June 4th where the Delaware City Fire Marine Unit struck a jetty that was sinking. It occurred around the C&D Canal at the Delaware River. Denver was notified in reference to a vessel. They were going to support a vessel that was a marine support vessel out of Fort Mahon area, and the Marine units from Fort Penn and Delaware City were dispatched. While en route, the Delaware City Marine unit struck a jetty and was taken on water. Fire board received a Mayday transmission from the damaged vessel with a report that 3 people had jumped into the water and the vessel was sinking. Additional resources were dispatched, notifications were made, and actions were taken to secure a positive outcome of a very stressful situation involving emergency first responders. The recognition demonstrates a team noteworthy contribution, which resulted in the successful handling of a major incident beyond the average of a normal activity level. So you guys are receiving.
Seems that D squad's the only shift doing really well.
The rest of our shifts, 4 of them, and they are, have other great employees. These 2 are receiving the Critical Team Award again. It is not just those 2. These 2 are the only 2 that could be here from the shift. I'll make that clear. On January 3rd, the decon team was dispatched for a possible meth lab issue in the area of Sharpie, and another one at Hollingsworth Track. A call was received from recon requesting an ambulance for a person that was possibly exposed to the meth lab. From further investigation, it was determined that the patient was no longer at the scene but had returned home. EMS resources were sent to the patient's location, as well as the fire department, hazmat, and decon. For these reasons, these 2 guys are receiving the Critical Incident Team Award again. Rick Mundell was in there. Yeah, you done. Can we have Jacqueline Vernon, Ann Blayloff, Matthew Adams, Lisa McNulty, and Sue Wilson? These guys are being awarded for Critical Incident Team Award as well. On October 17th, the 911 Center received numerous calls regarding a suicidal person that appeared to be cutting himself. 2 different locations were given by the caller for the incident. One being Kmart at Governor Square, which now involves Delaware State Police. Telecommunicator Vernon and telecommunicator Commode recognized this and coordinated with Newcastle County's response with the Delaware State Police. Telecommunicator Vernon was able to access the surveillance camera at the Bear Library and located the victim in front of the library, and there was a substantial bleeding from his arms. For Recon C-Squad teamwork, they're being awarded the Critical Incident Team Award.
Thank you, Chief Miller. I'd now like to call on Chief Larry Tan to join the Director and County Executive at the front of the room, and Assistant Chief Daniel Seymour will read the awards for the Emergency Medical Services Division.
Thank you. If, as I call people up, if you can come to the front, and Lieutenant Dudley will hand you your certificates or paperwork as you exit to my left. Paramedic Robert J. Tomchak Jr., Paramedic First Class Alan Short, Paramedic Corporal Lorraine Williams, Paramedic Corporal Matthew Watson, Paramedic Corporal Daniel J. Pinero, Paramedic Corporal Abigail Haas, Lieutenant Dawn Galesian. On the afternoon of July 5th, 2014, police and fire department units were dispatched for a report of a crash at Marsh and Namens Road. As additional calls came into the 911 center, it was apparent that one of the vehicles was no longer at that location and had been involved in a second collision at Marsh Road and Chestnut Street. Delaware State Police were on scene and were reporting 2 unconscious occupants with 1 still trapped. Newcastle County paramedics were added to the response, bringing Medic 1 and Corporal Haas as the acting sergeant, who was on scene within minutes. On her arrival, the fire department commander advised Corporal Haas that both of the patients had stopped breathing. Quickly assessing the situation as fire department crews started resuscitation efforts, Corporal Haas directed Medic 4, which was in the area responding on another incident, to respond to the crash scene in addition to the responding Medic 1. On their arrival a short time later, Paramedic Tomchak and Corporal Pinero from Medic 4 split up and began with the resuscitation efforts of the 2 critically injured patients. Medic 1 with Corporal Watson and Williams arrived a few minutes later and also split up and joined the effort. Paramedic First Class Short and Lieutenant Galesian arrived sometime after this, allowing for an all-hands approach in addressing the needs of these 2 critically injured patients. One of the patients was resuscitated at the scene and transported while crews continued their efforts on the second patient and began moving to the hospital. Faced with 2 critically injured patients and the need for additional providers, Corporal Haas, as the acting sergeant, acted quickly and decisively to relocate resources and directed arriving personnel in a manner that would best serve these patients. Her decisions in the early stages of this incident were responsible for the successful resuscitation of 1 critical patient at the scene, as well as the ongoing care provided to the second critical patient. Corporal Haas is receiving a commendation of merit, and the other responders are receiving a distinguished unit citation. Congratulations. Paramedic Brian H. Florian, Paramedic Corporal Lorraine Williams, Paramedic Corporal Matthew Watson, Paramedic Corporal Daniel J. Pinero, Paramedic Corporal Rui Coons, Sergeant Kenneth Dunn, Lieutenant Dawn Galesian, Senior Lieutenant Joseph J. Dudley. Shortly after 11 p.m. on the evening of August 16, 2014, fire department and EMS units were dispatched to a report of a rollover motor vehicle collision on Monchanan Road in the area of the back entrance to Winterthur.
After some initial confusion, a two-vehicle crash was located in the 3000 block of Thompson Station Road with 3 occupants trapped in the vehicle. First responders counted a total of 5 patients with various degrees of injuries and immediately began requesting additional resources. 6 basic life support ambulances from local fire departments, in addition to 3 Newcastle County paramedic units and supervisors, ultimately made a response to this incident. First arriving units were able to quickly size up the number and severity of injured patients and began assigning resources in priority order as they arrived. Personnel were assigned to treat and monitor patients still trapped in vehicles to ensure they could be quickly managed once removed from the wreckage. Others were assigned to begin treatment as transport units arrived. Ultimately, it was an hour before all occupants were extricated from vehicles, properly immobilized, and transported to the area trauma center. 4 trauma alerts and 1 trauma code were managed efficiently, and information from the scene was properly communicated to the receiving hospital to ensure continuity of care and that the appropriate resources were on hand to manage these incoming patients. These responders are to be commended for their actions and are being recognized with a unit letter of commendation. Paramedic Jessica M. Gurgic, Paramedic Corporal Kevin C. Copperthwaite, Paramedic Corporal Daniel or David L. Lawrence, Paramedic Corporal Matthew W. Watson, Paramedic Corporal Lorraine K. Williams, Paramedic Corporal Abigail Haas, Lieutenant Dawn Delizia. At 19:19 hours on August 31st, the fire department and Medic 4 were alerted for a report of a serious motor vehicle collision on Philadelphia Pike at Sunset Drive. Arriving only a few minutes later, crews found 2 patients trapped in separate vehicles, one of them in critical condition. A second advanced life support unit was requested and Medic 1 was added to the response, along with a supervisor. Medic 4's personnel, Corporals Copperthwaite and Lawrence, worked to stabilize the heavily entrapped patient by gaining access to the back seat of the car, stabilizing his cervical spine, and maintaining his airway and assisting with ventilations. The patient had suffered significant blunt force trauma with multiple fractures of the lower extremities and a near amputation of one leg. Meanwhile, the second patient was extricated from his vehicle and was moved to a waiting ambulance when Corporals Watson and Williams from Medic 1 arrived on scene. As the acting sergeant, Corporal Haas also arrived with Paramedic Urgent. Once it was determined that the second patient was relatively stable, Corporal Williams was assigned to treat and transport the patient, while the others now began to assist with the first patient, still trapped in his car. Almost 30 minutes after the initial dispatch, the first patient was finally freed from the wreckage, but deteriorated rapidly into cardiac arrest. Corporals Copperthwaite, Lawrence, Watson, and Paramedic Gurgic were all now assisting with resuscitation efforts as the patient was transported to the hospital. Despite an effort to revive this patient, he ultimately succumbed to his injuries. But by intervening quickly to initially sustain vital signs and following up with a team approach to resuscitation efforts, the patient received the best possible chance for a positive outcome. All of these responders are being recognized with a Distinguished Unit Citation. Paramedic Patrick M. O'Boyle, Paramedic Jessica M. Gurgic, Paramedic Corporal Abigail Haas, Wilmington Police Department Senior Corporal Jose Santana, Wilmington Police Senior Corporal Joseph DeLuce, Wilmington Police Master Corporal Stephen Carey. On the evening of September 1st, 2014, units were dispatched to Rockford Park in the city of Wilmington for a report of a stabbing victim. Medic 8 with Paramedic O'Boyle arrived on scene and was directed by Wilmington Police to the victim, who was off the main roadway and about 20 feet down the steep embankment. Police officers Santana, Delos, and Parrott were already coordinating efforts and rendering aid to the patient, who was suffering from an apparent self-inflicted stab wound to the upper abdomen. The 6 to 8 inch serrated kitchen knife was still embedded in the patient. Access to the patient was difficult, and his removal would require special equipment. Fire department personnel began ringing a haul system to bring the patient safely back up to the roadway, while personnel, now joined by paramedic Corporal Haas and paramedic Gerchik, worked to stabilize the knife in place, dress the wound, and further assess the patient. An IV was started and the patient was immobilized to a backboard prior to moving him up the steep terrain. Working as a team, these paramedics and police officers, along with the Wilmington Fire Department, worked together for approximately 40 minutes before being able to successfully remove and transport this victim to a trauma center. For their teamwork and efforts to effectively manage this patient in difficult terrain, we are recognizing these personnel with a unit letter of commendation. Paramedic candidate Mary Pizzadelli, paramedic Scott Keir, paramedic Yvonne Russell, paramedic first class Scott E. Sizer, paramedic first class Julianne F. Santora, paramedic first class Laura E. Hill, paramedic first class Jessica A. Duncan, paramedic Corporal Brian J. Warwick, paramedic Corporal Thomas J. Murphy, paramedic Corporal Donald L. Morris, paramedic Corporal Richard Mormon Jr., paramedic Corporal Isaac Hankins, EMS Special Operations Support Specialist Kenneth Phibbs, Lieutenant Mark R. Logeman, Lieutenant Martha L. Russ. Late in the afternoon of September 21st, 2014, the 911 call center started receiving calls for a report of a bus overturned on the Route 1 ramp to Route 13 northbound. The reports that a large tourist bus had overturned with upwards of 50 passengers on board brought an initial response of 6 ambulances and 2 paramedic units, along with supervisors and command staff. More information came into the dispatch center, and as the number of injured victims continued to grow, additional resources were added to the response. As units and personnel arrived, assignments were handed out by priority. Initial triage of patients, treatment areas, transportation coordination, medical communication with receiving hospitals, and tracking of all patients. All personnel assigned to the incident worked well, often changing roles or responsibilities to ensure timely management of patients by priority, transportation to designated hospitals, pertinent communication with receiving facilities, and tracking of patient numbers and destinations. In all, 49 patients were transported to 5 area emergency rooms in a little over an hour from the first EMS units arriving on scene. At one point, Christiana ER, the regional level 1 trauma facility, had 4 trauma codes headed to surgery, 12 trauma alerts being evaluated for possible serious injuries, and 4 patients with more minor injuries. This was in addition to the dozens of patients being handled by other facilities. Ultimately, the response to this mass casualty incident included 17 basic life support ambulances, 6 paramedic units, and 6 EMS division staff, along with the Delaware State Police helicopter and numerous other support and fire department personnel. While this incident was unfolding, additional paramedic units were placed in service to handle the normal call volume of the county. 17 paramedic level responses were dispatched throughout the county during the period that units were committed to this incident. For their professionalism, teamwork, and ability to adapt to meet the operational needs under the rigors of a large multi-casualty incident, these responders are being recognized with a distinguished unit citation. I did. Keely Warwick, you were on my list, I'm sorry. Keely Warwick was also a part of that response. Please come forward. When you have such a big incident, it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. Thank you. Paramedic Thomas Castiglione, Paramedic Corporal Kevin C. Copperthwaite, Paramedic Corporal David L. Lawrence, Sergeant Kenneth Dunn. On the evening of October 2nd, 2014, the Wilmington Fire Department and Newcastle County paramedics were dispatched to the area of Lee Boulevard and North Market Street for a report of a serious motor vehicle crash. Sergeant Dunn and Medic 4 with Paramedic Corporals Copperthwaite and Lawrence were on the initial dispatch. Arriving units found a two-vehicle crash with a total of 4 patients, 2 still trapped in a vehicle. A request for additional ALS resources brought Medic 8 with Paramedic Castiglione to the scene. The first victim was able to be quickly extricated from the car and was managed by Medic 8's crew. The second victim was heavily entrapped and barely breathing. Gaining access from the rear seat to the victim, Paramedic Corporal Copperthwaite was able to open her airway and restore some spontaneous breathing until the extrication was completed approximately 20 minutes later. Medic 4's crew continued to manage and monitor this patient until turning her over to DSP Aviation for transport to the trauma center. They then completed evaluations on one remaining patient and transported him to the hospital. For their coordinated actions that evening in handling a multiple patient scene with a critically injured and trapped patient, these personnel are being recognized with a unit letter of commendation. Paramedic Corporal Paul G. Mazzoli, Paramedic Corporal Brian J. Warwick, Sergeant Kenneth Young. I'll get started while Brian's trying to do that. Early in the afternoon of September 27, 2014, Medic 9 with Paramedic Corporals Mazzoli and Warwick were dispatched to the unit block of Adeline Avenue in Newark for a report of a child bitten by a dog. Sergeant Dunn also responded on the call. While en route, units were advised that this was an active attack by a pit bull and that they should stage until Newark Police deemed the situation under control. Communicating with the dispatch center, EMS crews arrived shortly and staged in the front yard while awaiting clearance from NPD. After several minutes, units were summoned to the rear yard and police were advising that they were going to attempt to pass the injured child out of a basement window. The location of the attacking dog in the house was still not known. Unable to insert an officer through the window, NPD then advised that they would bring the child out a sliding glass door to the rear deck. The child was removed from the house and quickly moved to a waiting ambulance. The critically injured 8-year-old had suffered numerous bite wounds with one arm nearly severed at the shoulder. While en route to AI DuPont Hospital, Mazzoli and Ward dressed the child's wound, started an IV for possible medication administration, and continued to console the severely traumatized young girl. Due to the extent of her injuries, the child was eventually transferred to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for specialized care. Days later, Sergeant Dunn, Corporals Mazzoli and Warwick traveled to CHOP to check on the progress of the 8-year-old child and lend support to the family. For their actions on that day in September, these responders are being recognized with a unit letter of commendation. Paramedic First Class Bruce Durante, retired. Paramedic First Class Durante was appointed to Newcastle County EMS as an ambulance cardiac technician in April 1983, and later attended the Medical Center of Delaware's paramedic training program in 1985, achieving his paramedic certification in 1986. He was later promoted to the rank of Paramedic First Class in April of 2004. In 1998, he served as a member of the Paramedic Protocol Committee. Paramedic First Class Durante also served as one of the early training preceptors for Newcastle County. Preceptors performed field instruction evaluation for new paramedics and would later become known as field training officers. Bruce's technical expertise was frequently used to orient new paramedics to the monitor defibrillators and other equipment carried on advanced life support units. Over the years, Paramedic First Class Durante has received numerous thanks from the public, and his official commendations include a commendation from the Delaware State Police in 1986 and a letter of commendation in 2008. He was also the recipient of a Newcastle County Council tribute in 2010 for his actions to assist an injured worker on Main Street in Middletown in July of that year. After almost 32 years of service, we congratulate Bruce and offer him our best wishes in retirement. Okay. At this time, I'd like to have our Emergency Management Coordinator, Dave Carpenter, come up to do his presentation.
I'm the only thing between you and getting blood circulation back to your toes. I'm going to be very short. My attendee was not able to make it. His daughter became sick in the middle this morning. He had to take her to the hospital, and the other attendee was not able to attend tonight. But I will say, on behalf of the Office of Emergency Management, I'd like to commend Dave Garland, Steve Sorenko, and also John DiGiovanni, who was not listed, as the Newcastle County Skywarn coordinators and assistant coordinators. This program has been in inception for a long time. However, recently these three have really elevated this program to its heights. In partnership with the National Weather Service, this is the group of coordinators that take upon the volunteer corps of storm spotters throughout Newcastle County. We work very closely with them during all critical weather events. They assist us in gathering damage assessment, storm reports, and also reporting back to the National Weather Service concrete and official reports on the events that happen during severe weather, both winter and summer events. Dave in particular is commended because he assisted the National Weather Service during the damage assessment during the EF1 tornado last year, or in June of 2013. In addition, this past year, the Skywarn program hosted a training in which over 120 attendees attended that training over in our Gillian building this past fall. And for that, we are offering them a letter of commendation for their services.
This time, I'd like to call Lieutenant Colonel Father David Murphy to the podium for the benediction.
Let us pray. Merciful God, we thank you for the gifts you give us. Help us to always do your will, and with your blessing, now make us witnesses to your truth. With this we make our prayer. Amen.
Thank you, Father Murphy. On behalf of the entire Department of Public Safety, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here this morning. I know it's a long presentation, but it is very worthwhile to recognize these significant accomplishments of all the members of the public safety family as well as a lot of the citizens.